questions up.
Did you want me to just give a quick summary of what we're doing, or?
That'd be great, and then people can bounce off of that.
Okay. So folks, hi everybody. So as you folks know, we've been managing the lake since I think 2006. Fanwort has been in the lake for many years. It's in past years it had been controlled fairly well with the drawdown, but it was always there. Some years it was not so bad. Some years it was worse. But certainly over the last 3 years, it's gotten a lot worse. We have tried doing some spot treatments in some of the coves with some good success, but really in the contributions from ARC and Wendy Gendron, certainly the data that she's collected over the last several years has shown the fanwort has really exploded in the lake and has really become kind of the primary issue that we've been seeing here. So the plan for this coming summer, and it's actually already been approved happily by the Lunenburg and Shirley Conservation Commission. So in terms of permitting and whatnot, we're kind of ready to go. But the plan would be to use the Sonar brand herbicide, which is fluoridone herbicide. Works really well on fanwort. It's a systemic product, so it does kill the roots and provides multiple years of control, but it does have a longer contact time to work. So it does require us doing kind of multiple applications of the herbicide, and we'll be using both granular and liquid formulations of the herbicide, and we'll be starting the treatments in late April, probably doing at least 3 applications about 3 to 4 weeks apart. So the idea is to keep the fluoridone in the water at a certain concentration for 90 plus days to control the fanwort. And we think that will really knock back the fanwort population, certainly for this summer as well. The summer that we're doing the treatments, it will keep a lot of the other plants down as well. So a lot of the native plants that have been causing problems over the years, any milfoil that's present will control that, curly leaf pondweed. So it's really will be an all-encompassing kind of treatment. There won't be any needs to do any other type of treatment this year. And while we expect 3+ years of good control of the fanwort, eventually we will need to go back to trying to do some spot treatments at some point. But I think this treatment we have planned here, since fanwort is really the main culprit of issues, is something that's really needed to be done. And again, we'll have a great year this year, even with all the other plants. It'll keep all the other plants down, and those plants, the native plants, the pondweeds and stuff, will come back more rapidly than the fanwort. So we will plan to do kind of our normal treatment program again in 2026, but I think we'll still see some carryover benefit of some of the other plants too. So hopefully that won't be as bad. And I think we'll see 3 good years of control of the fanwort before we have to start spot treating that again. But this is very similar to what was done on Hickory Hills Lake in town back in 2020. And I think that has provided pretty good control there as well. So again, we're all approved by the commissions, so we're kind of ready to go. I know you guys are still doing some fundraising, but be happy to answer any questions about anything about the program that you guys might have. Well, I can't, if you're talking, I can't hear you. I'm not sure what's going on.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. So one of the questions that comes up, Dominic, is we had a great freeze this winter. So do we really need to do it this year because we had such a great freeze?
Yeah, good drawdown. Yeah, this has been a good drawdown year, it seems. I'm assuming you guys were able to maintain your low water levels, and we certainly had the coldest winter we've had in a while. No, it's a great question. Fanwort, it's been building for a number of years now. And I don't think that one good year of drawdown is going to kind of knock it back to a great extent. We should obviously see some effects, but we really won't know that for sure until we see what comes back in the spring. But I mean, we have no reason to believe that it's going to provide a high level of control of fan wart for this coming summer. And I think we're just looking back at the data from the last few years. It's become enough of a problem, and just the plants have been growing. They've been happy. They've been, the root systems have expanded. They've become really established. And I just my opinion is that we won't see see some reduction, but not a substantial enough reduction throughout the course of the summer that would stop us from having to do the treatment, basically.
Right, and am I correct that it really only impacts the shoreline that was above water?
That's correct.
Shoreline underwater, so where all the fan wart is in our middle, is still all there.
Yeah, so again, the drawdown is really only going to affect the plants in the area that gets exposed, and then only those areas that really completely dry out and freeze. So, a lot of the cove areas, they're going to have real mucky sediments, and those types of areas don't respond very well to drawdown, even when we have a good weather year. So, so the drawdown also only affects a percentage of the fan wart. So anything, I think that you guys were able to reach your 6-foot target this year. Is that correct? Yeah.
No,
So anything like around that 6-foot mark and deeper, and maybe even a little bit, even maybe into the 5-foot, that stays kind of wet around the edges of the water. I mean, even during a good drawdown year, the fan wart's not affected in those areas and deeper. So,
right. And if our lake's not filled, our order condition says it has to be filled by April 1st.
Yeah.
If it's not filled, we're not going to do the treatment until it's filled.
It doesn't have to be completely filled. I mean, we yeah. So, I mean, how close are you guys to being filled right now? How far down are you now?
2 feet.
What do we do, Dan?
We're at 18 inches.
Oh, thanks, Ron.
You're welcome.
So you're only 18 inches down from normal level right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's
That's
fine. I mean, again, the treatment goes into the water, so as that water continues to rise, and again, we won't be starting the treatment for another month and a half here, so I'm sure the water will continue to rise, so I don't foresee that as being much of an issue.
Okay, great. Okay. And what else were they asking on Facebook? What was a lot of the other questions?
Those were the two main ones regarding Dominic's standpoint.
And one more question I have, Dominic, order conditions, drawdown, and the dam being closed. I keep trying to reiterate to people, if we say the dam's closed because it's 99.9% closed, because we have to have trickle going too early. But then I'll have Nate Jones that goes to the dam with his camera and takes a picture and says, no, see, it's not closed, water's coming out.
Yes.
So I said the order conditions that say we have to have a trickle.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a state regulation from Fish and Wildlife. The commissions are on board with it. I mean, you can't completely shut the water off because you're going to affect everything downstream of the lake. So the state requires there to be a minimum outflow from the lake during the refill period.
Yeah. So, Ron, did you have your hand up?
No, I didn't, but I did. I got a notice from Fish and Wildlife that they are going to stock the brook this spring. So we definitely, either it has to be going over the spillway or we got to be letting water out to the brook.
Yep.
Joanna, it's Lori. I did have my hand up because I just wanted to kind of come off the question that you asked to Dominic. that it sounds like, to me, it would be a good time to hit it because we did have some freeze, but at the same time, if we let this get much worse, I would assume that the treatments would have to be even more aggressive.
Right.
So,
Yeah, I mean, the treatment we're doing is we're bringing the whole lake volume up to a certain concentration, you know, and it's going to work. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, the longer we let the fan war persist, the longer it's allowed to establish itself. I mean, the chances of it, you know, worsening conditions in the lake and the areas where it will eventually come back will just continue to expand. So I think that's a good point. Yeah.
thank you.
And in terms of the herbicide, I mean, this particular herbicide has been used since the 1980s. It's very well understood. It's, again, as with all aquatic herbicides, it goes through multiple regulatory processes, both with the federal EPA. Massachusetts is one of the few states that also conducts its own reviews separate from the EPA. So the Massachusetts DEP and the Massachusetts Department of Agriculture Resources does their own review of these products. They are all, you know, again, approved for use. Sonar specifically is considered to be a very benign product. It's considered a reduced risk herbicide. Again, it's been used since the 80s with no issues. So it's really a good product that's had a lot of success over the years with this particular plant to the fan wart.
And the 3 treatments, do we close the lake a day on each of those treatments?
Yeah, so the treat on the days of the treatments themselves, we would close the lake to all uses as we normally do, and that's not required by label, but it's more to I think it's just prudent, right? I mean, you don't want people in the water as we're driving by applying the product. Just want to keep the users off the lake. We don't want to be going by anybody that's swimming or anything like that. So the only restriction on the label for this particular herbicide is for irrigation. So, you know, so there will be a kind of pretty much a summer-long restriction on using the water to any type of irrigation. So.
Okay, great. Deb, I know I saw Deb first. Go ahead.
I do. Thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
My first question is, I think I heard you say that we wouldn't need our regular treatment in 2025. Was that correct?
That's right. Yep. Yeah. So normally in other years, we would go around, do this pre-treatment survey, find the areas that are going to be problematic and get those specific areas approved. But, you know, this year we're doing kind of an all-encompassing sort of treatment. And as I said, although it's not going to provide the multiple years of control like it's going to a fan wart, it will also control the milfoil, curly-leaf pondweed. It will definitely slow down the growth of things like tape grass and pondweeds. So there's really no need to do any other type of treatment. This treatment this year will take care of everything for us.
Oh, great. That's wonderful. Thank you.
But to piggyback on that, we do have to watch for algae, correct? So
We
might
do.
have-
That's a good point, Joanna. Yeah, so we'll still be on the watch for the cyanobacteria blooms. I mean, the herbicides don't have any effect on algae. I mean, we've been definitely lucky for the last 5 years now or so. We haven't really had to do any kind of copper sulfate treatments, but yeah, that will continue with you know, Richie doing the SecuDisc readings and collecting algae samples if the clarity drops below 5 feet. So that the possibility that we may, based on that monitoring, if we may have to do a copper sulfate treatment specifically for the algae, but there wouldn't be any other type of weed treatment this year.
So is the algae treatment included in the contract? I thought I saw it.
You know what? I'll tell you guys, you guys are, trusting us with a pretty important work this year. I mean, if we had to do, I don't honestly know if we added the copper sulfate treatment into the contract. If we had to do one treatment, I mean, we would just go ahead and do that for you folks. I mean, I know this is a big expense for you guys, and I think it's well warranted, but I know it's a lot of money and a lot of funding that's included in that. If the need did arise for us to have to do a half lake copper sulfate treatment some point this summer, we can just cover that cost for you folks. I mean, we've been working with you guys for so long. I have no issue doing that.
Sorry, the second question that I have for you is, what is indicative of a successful treatment? How is it that you will determine whether or not this treatment really did reduce it in the way we hope that it will?
Okay. No, that's actually a good question. Allows me to talk a little bit more about what we're doing. So what's going to happen with this particular herbicide on fanwort? What's going to happen is you're going to see the fanwort start to discolor. It's going to turn yellow, white, and pink as the plants start to work. So that's a visual cue for us to see that the herbicide's working. And literally at the end point, the fanwort will be gone. So, by July and August, the fanwort should be gone. So any other time of the year it would be there and in full bloom at that time of the year. So it's going to be very clear to us if the treatment worked. But in addition to that, we'll be coming out to visit the lake in between those treatments to both look at the plants to make sure we're seeing that discoloration, seeing how it's progressing. We'll also be taking water samples for testing to see what the actual concentration of the herbicides are. We'll be doing that in between the treatments and also after the treatments are over. There is a slight possibility based on those observations and the sampling that we may do an additional application. That wouldn't be any more cost to you folks. But we're planning to do definitely 3 treatments, and again, if an additional treatment to kind of finish things off is needed, that would be included as well.
Okay, and lastly, how will all of this impact the current water testing that we do? Will it change the readings? Will it, do we need to work differently than we are now?
I mean, the herbicide itself shouldn't affect any of the water parameters that you guys are testing, but obviously we're going to be impacting the plant life in the lake pretty significantly, and most significantly on the invasive species that we don't want. But the fact that we're going to have a lot less plant growth in the lake, obviously that's going to have some effect on water parameters, but I mean, it's going to be good to continue that testing to see that. But it definitely, the footnote for any of the documentation say we did a sonar treatment in 2025. So if there's some changes, I mean, you may see some changes in some of the nutrient levels as there's less plants. The nice thing about sonar is I think you might actually see better water quality this year, because a lot of times like the sonar works and kills the plants very slowly. So unlike the treatment that we do normally where the plants die off in about 2 weeks, a lot of times when the plants die off quickly, as they die and decompose, they may create a kind of increased amount of phosphorus and nitrogen in the water for a short period of time. With this kind of slower die off, I don't think that you'll really see that kind of quick release or like an instantaneous release of potentially some more nutrients in the water from the plant biomass that's dying.
I think from a test result, we'll just want to be more cognizant for algae.
Yeah.
Because now the umbrellas gone, and the sun's gonna be there, so we're gonna want to continue to test for algae to get on top of that. And Rich had a question.
When we're talking about the allergy, did Hickory Hills experience a big allergy breakout with this when they had this done?
I don't know. I'm not aware. I mean, they've been dealing with kind of periodic, short-lived and localized algae blooms for many years. But you know, the nice thing with the sonar is it's very specific for the fanwort. So all the other plants in the lake, although they're likely to be suppressed this year, or all the good plants, the native plants are going to come back and fully grow pretty quickly. And those are the plants that help maintain that kind of ecological balance in the lake and prevent algae blooms from happening. And so I don't believe that Hickory Hills saw any kind of substantial increase in algae blooms the year that we treated.
Any other questions? Anybody? Go ahead.
So in 2007, when the entire lake was treated, was sonar used then?
No,
No?
we've never used sonar.
Okay.
Yeah, we've never used sonar. We've only used for fanwort control, we've only used the flumioxazin herbicide periodically over the last 5 years or so to treat a couple smaller sections of the lake. So sonar has never been used
So
at
what
Lake Shirley before.
that big treatment that was done in 2007, you know, that was that for fanwort at the time?
No,
No?
that was for milfoil, the one every year.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, when we first started the program, milfoil was by far the main target of it was all over the place, you know, and through the management of that, obviously with 2007 being the first year, there was a lot of it to treat, but with that, milfoil's dropped off pretty dramatically to the point where we did find a little bit in 2024, but it had been pretty well gone from the lake for many years, and we were mostly treating curly leaf pondweed and spot treating areas of overabundant native species. And again, we had largely ignored the fanwort population for a while because we were, you know, the drawdown was providing some control. It was still kind of increasing in abundance over time. So
In cost.
Mm-hmm.
In the money biggest.
So I just had a quick follow-up question.
Yep, go ahead.
So, if you had said, I think at the annual meeting that this would probably be good for 3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
And I know it's hard to speculate, but based on your knowledge of our lake and what you've seen over the past years and after this treatment, when would you expect another lake-wide treatment to be necessary if you can speculate at all?
yeah, I mean, I would say, again, speculating for sure, but you know, usually with the sonar treatments, we would obviously in say 2026, we shouldn't see really any fanwort come back. 2027, probably very little coming back. Probably start like 2028, we'll probably be able to do some spot treatments of the fanwort with the flumioxazin. So, I mean, if I had to guess, I think somewhere around 6 to 8 years, you might be looking at another full lake treatment. I mean, again, comparing to Hickory Hills Lake, I mean, they've been doing a lot of diver hand pulling of fanwort regrowth. We treated that in 2020. They did very little. I don't think they did any hand pulling in 2021. They started doing some hand pulling of growth in 2022. In 2023, we started doing some spot treatments with flumioxazin while in areas that just got too abundant to do hand pulling, but they've continued to do that. Hand pulling, and I think we've been treating more and more acres of spot treatments each year. They've been finding more areas that just get too dense, but they're so this coming summer would be what, the 5th year after the after that. So I think, they're kind of, that Hickory Hills is probably kind of looking at that maybe the 6th year after treatment. They might consider redoing the whole lake treatment, but I think they're trying their best between the hand pulling and the spa treatments to try to extend that time as much as possible.
Josh, go ahead.
Dominic, when you talked about the changing colors and kind of
Mhm.
disintegrating, does that mean that it will totally disintegrate, kind of like break down into little things and disappear, or does it mean we're going to be raking shorelines? Just so I have an idea.
That's another good question.
My question.
Typically, so one of the reasons we want to start early, so we want to start if possible in late April, is we like to get the herbicide in contact with the plants as early as possible when they start growing. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. One is the plants tend to be more susceptible to the herbicide when they're just starting to grow, and the other reason is once the plants come in contact with the herbicide, they start to slow down, right? So they start to die, but they also start to stop growing too during that process. I mean, they may grow a little bit more, but the idea of starting early is we'll have a lot less biomass of the fanwort to die off. But they die fairly slowly, and they generally collapse because it's such a slow process. They sort of lose their leaves over a period of weeks, and then you're left with just stems, and then the stems just kind of collapse. So it's been my experience with these types of treatments that you won't get a lot of that floating dead plant material floating up to shore, because I mean the leaves fall off first little by little, so there really isn't like a fully grown like dark black plant that's going to be there towards the end of the treatment.
Josh,
Have you ever had an unsuccessful sonar treatment? And if we have like excessive rain, does that, right after the treatment, does that ruin like the volatility of what you just put into the lake?
Yeah, so I mean we're absolutely, so we kind of plan, so we kind of plan for some rain, obviously, but yeah, if we had a very unusual amount of rain, like if we had a bunch of hurricanes or something come through this summer, but we always kind of we stand by the treatment. So like if we end up having to use more product than we budgeted for to make sure that the treatment worked because the rain was a little bit higher, that's a risk that Solitude takes. Is it possible if we have a dry year that we may not, I mean, we're probably planning to put all of the product in no matter what that we have budgeted, because I think the more product we put in, the longer the treatment could potentially last. But so that's a risk that we assume. I mean, if we had a really unusual year, I mean, there's like, if more so than usual, that we, no matter how much we put in, it wouldn't work. I mean, that's like an act of God type thing. But I mean, we're prepared for slightly higher than average rainfall this summer. I think we can definitely deal with that. Like I said, if we need to do an extra treatment, or if we need to add 10% more product than we've originally planned on doing, that's something that we're going to take care of and make sure that the treatment works for you guys.
does anybody have a question before we go back to Deb? Okay, go ahead, Deb.
Thank you. We're talking about full lake coverage. So does that mean every nook and cranny? So every cove will be covered, even like the backs of coves that are kind of tucked away?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they have to.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an interesting. So what sonar, it moves around it dilutes into the lake, the whole lake volume relatively quickly. So what we're going to do is we'll apply the herbicides just where the plants are. But we know that herbicide comes off the granules that we put in, and it really fairly quickly distributes itself throughout the entire water volume. It's like if you had like a bathtub and dropped like a dye pellet in one end of the bathtub, it's like, you know, if you come back a day later, that the whole bathtub's going to be pink. So I mean, that's kind of like what happens with the sonar. You know, we can help things out by just applying the herbicide where the plants are. Gives us a slightly higher concentration, slightly higher exposure in that area. But once that herbicide comes off the granules, I mean, it generally distributes itself throughout the entire water volume. So it's really going to get into all of the lake. And we will apply, you know, we will put the pellets down in all areas of the lake, all the coves. Now there are those few coves that you know, we have always designated kind of as habitat preservation zones. So I'm not sure that we're going to be allowed to necessarily put the pellets into those areas directly, but know that the herbicide will carry itself and diffuse into those areas pretty quickly. So.
All right, thank you. And my last question is, the closure is only on the day of. Is that correct?
For recreational purposes like swimming, boating, yes, just the day of each of the treatments. But as I mentioned, the restrictions for irrigation will be posted really throughout, starting with the first treatment, really till 30 days after the final treatment. The lake water will need to be not used for any kind of irrigation.
And that's what he said. So for the summer season, you're really going to lose irrigation because it's 30 days. Okay, I can water, but he's coming to do the next treatment. So it's 30 days. Okay, no, he's coming to do. So really, you got to, for your plants lawn, come up, if you do it from the lake, come up with a solution for this summer of how you're going to water your plants grass. Because really, it's going to be the whole summer. You're not going to be able to do that.
We don't have any agriculture that directly abuts the lake anyway, so I don't see that as a major impact.
Well, I water my lawn through the.
Yeah, nobody should be watering their lawns. They'll turn white. They'll turn white like the fanwort this year. So you don't want to do that.
So
Thank you very much.
what other questions? Well, we got Dominic. That's it.
All right.
All right, Dominic, you can stay. You can go. Everybody's done with Dominic.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go
So-
eat dinner. If you guys have anything else you need me for, let me know. I can stay on.
One question, hold on.
Do we know what coves are designated as habitat cove or?
I believe Swamp Cove, and I believe the cove in the third lake, when you go this way instead of the dam, there's that little back
Behind
cove.
Railroad Cove?
Yeah, where the first eagle's nest was,
Oh,
in that little spin, right?
Yes, I think you're right. Yeah, there's two habitat preservation areas. Yeah.
We believe we have two, those two areas.
Yeah, Swamp Cove
Yes.
and that cove.
Just like Joanne.
You reverse back.
You
got
no, where Sue Dorsey lives.
Yeah,
You follow that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
The back cove.
Yeah, back
Yeah.
cove, yeah.
The one we can't get into.
Yeah, Joanne Hamburg's over here. It's behind her. Yeah.
I've been in there.
It is a good fishing.
That's where we used to make out.
Yeah.
That was our make out. room.
Where?
That was our make out. So,
Make out?
and that cove, that was make out cove. All right. So, who's that? Dominic, love you. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Take care. Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Okay,